welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show for our third episode of the week. I am Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is a man who has a cat over his shoulder again, Logan Stump.
Every time we start one of these, it's every single time we start one of these.
She just wants the spotlight. She wants to be up there.
Yeah, so I told my wife that too. I was like, okay, Hazel's gotten to the point now where she's just craves the attention because she's seen Twitter.
She's a diva.
Right. She's seen the tweets that have been going around about her. She knows that Doyle's a huge fan. And she's made multiple appearances on Twitter. I remember back in the day when we first started this with me, it was like we would tweet Doyle about Hazel watching Doyle and watching Weeby and all of them on Extra Time. And now she's just become like this legend. And now she's getting a bigger head because she's been on Twitter now. She's become part of the show. So I think people are going to start to expect it, Jordan. I think people that follow us that have seen the tweets are going to start to expect at least an appearance, right?
Yeah, can we get her a little kit or something?
I think we could. She gets really cold at night too, so I think it'd be great to get her like a little kit. Maybe like change it out or like at least a little scarf, like a collar or something that looks like a MLS scarf or something. I'm sure we can figure something.
It would be cool if she had like an Orlando kit because like they're the lion, they have like the lions and
like
that's
pride.
like it's like a relative of the cats. So that'd be fun.
I think we can make it work. I'll have to talk to her about it, but yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Well, we're not here to talk about Hazel. We're actually here to talk about something that starts with an H, though. What are we talking about, Logan?
So we're going to be talking about the Houston Dynamo, Jordan. So we're going to have Andres back on from Foxtrot. Like you'll know him as Foxtrot on Twitter. He's now got a fun podcast that he does with his co-host. His name's Tony, and they do Noodle Time episodes. So that's what the podcast is called. I think it's a pretty cool name. And he's got like this whole Fox thing on tap. Like I think it's like he's cornered this market on being the Foxes, which is really cool. So, we had him on last year to do the 2021 season preview. And I know last year they were feeling a little bit better about their chances, but I would say
this is my first time meeting him. I wasn't on here last year because I was working.
Right. Yeah. So it was, this was early. Jordan, this was, so last time that we did an episode with Andres, he was the one that we went literally like 15 minutes and I didn't record it.
Yes, I remember.
I didn't record it. And then my Wi-Fi wouldn't work. It was like I was like sweating profusely because I wanted it all to go well. And, I was just starting.
And it was your first one on your own. It was like our second preview.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first one I couldn't be there for.
Mm-hmm.
And your first time doing an MLS one by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You did the Disney one for a bit by yourself, but you hadn't done like a guest one by yourself, right?
No, I've never done a guest one by myself, and unless it was you, which is always comfort. But yeah, I've never had a guest on. I was really nervous. I was just learning MLS, so I was trying to take it all in and trying to figure out who the Houston Dynamo were in about a span of a couple weeks. But I felt like it went well, but their season did not. So hopefully it wasn't me that cursed them, but everything you read, it was, last year probably was the worst year in Dynamo history. A lot of people are saying, so it should be interesting to kind of get his take. And it made me a huge signing today, which teams tend to do when we're having them previewed.
So what you're saying is you can only go up from here.
Honestly, yeah. I think I think we talked about this in the San Jose preview that's going to drop, that has already dropped. We talked about the fact that without Cincinnati, they'd have been the wooden spoon. So comforting, I know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? They may not have that luxury this year with Cincinnati rehauling, overhauling, but it seems like maybe Houston is as well. So we'll ask Andreas about that. So let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll welcome in our guest. Hey, Logan.
Hey, Jordan. How's it going?
Going good. Do you remember last year when we talked CBA stuff for MLS before the season kicked off?
Yeah, that was a wild time. I was kind of nervous that the season wasn't going to start. It started getting down to like the last couple weeks and no season.
Do you know what other professional league may not have a season this year?
I mean, I've heard that the underwater basket weaving club and league have kind of gone under, but who else? I haven't heard.
Major League Baseball.
Oh,
They
wow.
locked their players out, and they are in negotiations right now, and it's not looking good. And if you want to hear more information on that, we will be recording an episode of our Extra Innings Baseball show next week, and we'll be talking whoever gets in the Hall of Fame, if anybody gets in the Hall of Fame, next week as well. Or you can listen to any of our previous available episodes. We did talk about the initial lockout when it first happened, so you can go listen to those. If you want to watch some videos on some beautiful stadiums that I have visited and the Hall of Fame, I have started doing a baseball bucket list that is on YouTube. And so far, I've done an episode on the Hall of Fame and 2 episodes on Camden Yards and seeing Shohei Ohtani pitch and hit. So, been a good time. We're really still in the infancy of launching that. I think it's been maybe a blessing in disguise that the CBA talks are going on right now, because we're doing all these previews for MLS right now. But if you are a baseball fan, I don't know how many people overlap with MLS on that, but if you are, you can check that out. It is called the Extra Innings Baseball Show. You can search that. The links will be in the description of the video. But yeah, if you want to hear Logan talk some Cubs, me talk some Orioles, and us talk Major League Baseball all together, you can follow us there. And we are back from our break, and we have Andres Naranjo with us today from the Foxtrot. How are you today, Andres?
Hey guys, very ecstatic with the news today about Sebastian Ferreira and the international spot, the extra one. So it's a lot of things going on in the next couple of weeks with the preseason starting too.
Yeah, so we had you on last year to talk some Dynamo, and I know last year, at least in my perspective, it was kind of a wait and see season. They had gone out and gotten Parker. They had tried to solidify some defense. They've added a couple nice attacking pieces, but Jordan and I, and they started well because Jordan and I did a live stream of them and the Quakes to start the season, and we had watching Houston, it looked like they had at least kind of shored up some of the issues. It was really quick and really early on, but it had seemed like it was going to go better, and then it kind of fell apart towards the end. And that's kind of like leading into what our first question. Well, actually, where can people find your stuff? I know there's different avenues that you use to get in touch with a lot of the Houston fan base. So can you kind of tell us where people can find your stuff?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm mostly active on Twitter at Dynamic Foxtrot. That's been the place where I started. Essentially 6 years ago, I was mostly just posting a lot of Dynamo stuff, Dynamo related news, as well as Dash and Toros whenever they were their own affiliates. And yeah, now with my podcast Noodle Time that I started last year, I'm mostly on YouTube as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, a lot of those the most popular platforms as well. So and yeah, it's just a lot of Dynamo talk, which has been my passion for almost 10 years now. So it's very fun.
All right, so if you want, can you kind of reflect on the 2021 season with the Dynamo? What went wrong in Houston? Maybe what are some positives that you can kind of take away from last season heading into the 2022 campaign this year?
Oh yeah, and you mentioned the very first game against San Jose Earthquakes last year, which we thought that Tab Ramos and the team had like an idea as to how to bounce back from the last several years. And obviously, this being Tab's very first professional gig as a head coach, and especially in MLS, it seemed pretty demanding. And back then, I can recall myself being pretty optimistic in those circumstances. And yeah, we thought he had some idea of like to apply like a game plan throughout the season, and it turns out that it wasn't the case at all. It was mostly, especially like halfway through the season when we entered that 16 game winless streak. We learned a lot of things about Tab and the team, and And yeah, it was just like for the most part, it's been a combination of those annoyances with Tab, as well as our thoughts with like have have the squad, because like we felt like every single game we were just playing for a draw, or we're just gonna win this game in like in the most unlikely scenario, which I felt like this team has just been like trying to throw something against the wall to see what sticks. And overall, like it was so depressing, and especially for me, since I've been watching like all the Dynamo games, especially this past 7 years. This was a new low, and especially trying to keep aside what happened with Tetsugo coming in the middle of the season. It was extremely like bad. Like it was actually the worst season in Dynamo history. Like which is something. And before I get to negatives though, like the only positive last year was just the fact that we somehow got back El Capitan from FC Dallas after 3 years somehow. Other than that, like everything else was extremely bad, because the Dynamo never finished in last place of the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference like before they moved. They never finished last in the conference in back-to-back seasons, and they did that last year. And they also it was also the first time in club history they didn't win a single road game in the entire season. And it's also the very first time they finished the season with the lowest point percent average in club history, which was 0.88. And you just look at those stats, and one stat that really came to mind was from Sam Stejko. He works for the Athletic. He did bring in this stat right around the end of the season. Was that Tab Ramos becoming the head coach with the lowest point per game average in MLS history after 50 games, which is 0.91. And yeah, like and just going back to that, when I told you about like the main worry last season being that Tab was like very inexperienced, and we tried to bring him in as a guy to help develop the homegrowns, or at least academy players, and bring in like this new identity. It didn't work out at all, and I feel like, and obviously I don't really like to really pile on Tab, because it wasn't mostly his fault, which was also fault of Matt Jordan and like the lack of vision by him, as well as Gabriel Brenner, who used to be our majority owner. And honestly, it's depressing to see, because like when I in the few occasions I got to meet Tab, especially when speaking to the media, he seems like a really amazing person as well, very professional. And it's just bad that he got into those circumstances, but at the same time, the decisions that he made over the course of the season causes us that, and got us into that situation as well. So it's a little bit of both, you know, of Matt Jordan's negligence, as well as Tab's decisions on the field, which costed us this, and made last season the way it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that just speaking about Tab, like I think I remember when he was announced, a lot of people in just MLS Twitter and circles thought it was a good hire. I was never big on Tab due to his tenure with like the U.S. under 23 teams and not qualifying for the Olympics. So I was not ever as high on that. Now, positioning, you mentioned, they have a new majority owner of the Dynamo, Ted Siegel. Is that right? Siegel or Segal?
Ted Siegel, yeah.
Ted Siegel, okay. And new general manager, and Pat Onstad. Looking ahead, what do you think the focus is for those two coming into this team for the Dynamo? And do you think that there's a first order of business as the 2022 season approaches, and how they can return the Dynamo to relevancy?
Yeah, obviously there's going to be a lot of work to do, but when Ted Siegel came in, and like it was in the middle of the season, and you actually like it's pretty much hard to believe just based on the last 8 years, because he comes in as a new majority owner, essentially replacing Gabriel Brenner and adjusting the minority ownership, but he now has the control and stake over Gabriel Brenner, and like all of us, like, and especially like the hardcore fans like me, it sounded like a blessing, but at the same time, like we are keeping things, we're essentially taking things with a grain of salt. We are pretty much cautiously optimistic at that point, because at that point it's pretty much okay. We got a new owner. We don't know much about him, and like the information, based on the information that was available online, we didn't find much really. Like we just found like a couple pictures and that's it. And there isn't that much information, especially sporting wise. He doesn't seem to have like sports focused background, which was also like a little bit worrying. But from the main, since he took over like back in June, he pretty much like promised us all these things that we had to first see it in action to believe. Obviously, with us like being in a situation where like Gabriel Brenner didn't do really much aside of like bringing in helping to an extent helping bring in Albert Feliz outside of Wilmer Cabrera's influence, I like to say. But other than that, like the bad outweighs the good in this situation, and he comes in like and he brings this somewhat relief, because in the main press conference, like he announces like a designated player immediately, being like Teenage Adebe, and it's one of those things, like the little things that he mentions, and obviously taking into consideration that we had to like wait for the main decisions to happen. Like it's just one of those things, and the promises that he made that gave us some relief, like especially us the fans, and from there, like it's been very interesting to see how everything develops, because Matt Jordan is fired like 2 months later after his announcement, and then around 2 months later, Pat Onstad, which is like this insane figure like in the Dynamo circles, because like not only obviously his main influence is as a player, like he was this legend that won us 2 MLS Cups like back like 15 years ago, you know. This guy, and obviously with the background that he developed with the Columbus Crew and in MLS after he retired, he brings in this guy, and immediately we think, okay, this guy is serious. Because we will never figure out that Pat Onstad would come back, especially in this situation, and assuming that Ted Segal will never come in. And from there, we figured out that, okay, Ted Segal is not kidding around. He is for sure wants to build a program here, and yeah, well, he also like develops a technical director program position, and he makes all the decisions based on what has been going on with the Dynamo for the past several years. And obviously, I feel like the most painful one so far is either relieving Tab, even though you can understand why, because like coming out of the worst season in the club's history, you have to make that decision. But that's pretty much part of the business and the way things are. And that one, and I like to say Boniek Garcia being moving on to play. He's potentially retiring in Honduras, but I feel like that's one of the situations that you have to understand that he may want to play more, and those minutes he may not get those minutes anymore in Houston at his age. And yeah, and just looking at the things that I'm looking at the most, especially this year, heading into the next 10 years, like both Ted Segal and Pat Onstad have emphasized how they want to create this culture. And obviously, like the creation of this culture, like it has been said like a handful of times, especially by Matt Jordan when he was here. And whenever he said it, though, like no one believed him. And in this situation, obviously, with the promises that have been fulfilled by Ted Segal so far, and the plan, or at least the vision that Pat Onstad, as far as we understand, he wants to create this culture, or at least like a winning culture, just based on fulfilling, or at least like receiving all the resources from Ted Segal, which has been done so far. And creating this culture and an investment, I feel like it's one of those things that has been fulfilled so far by the team. Although it's a long way to go, because obviously the results are going to speak for themselves, and results are going to think that are the things that are going to matter as well. So the culture and investment, I feel like it's one of those things that have been promised the most, and honestly, those things that us as fans are looking forward to.
I just wanted to add something here real quick too. You mentioned the two MLS Cup wins. One of the first MLS games I remember ever going to is actually the 2007 MLS Cup, because it was at RFK, and I'm up here in Maryland, so it was just an hour and a half drive, and I remember seeing, Houston defeat the Revs in 2007. So it was a good time.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. And it's interesting too because and Andres, we talked last year because they were going through that rebrand, and they were talking about the club culture. They were trying to build something, and I think you hit right on the head. Whenever every time that, and I was much more on the Tab good side. I like Tab. I thought that, given the right resources, given the team that he needed, I do think eventually he'd have become something. But again, I think it was just a matter of not getting the right personnel. There was issues, obviously, with the team not performing very well. But again, I was much more on the, keep him around, maybe see what happens. And a lot of that had to do with just the fact that I thought that there just wasn't that coach out there that I thought really fit their system just yet, or the money wasn't going to be spent in that case last year. But then they get in this new ownership, they get in this new GM, they start to put together technical directors, coaches that they kind of see as this vision of being the future Dynamo, and kind of returning them back to the powerhouse. And in speaking in that, Pat Onstead had pretty much his hand in everything over the last couple of years. He's been an assistant coach, he's been a chief scout. He's done some technical directing with a couple of the MLS clubs since 2011. And then he goes out and he brings in a head coach that'll replace Tab Ramos in Paulo Nagamura, who comes from Sporting KC's 2, which is their academy team, their youth team. And Nagamura has had a hand in a couple of the youth players that have kind of come through that system. SKC seems to be really good at churning out some really good talent. He worked with Gianluca Busio, who now plays for Venezia over in Italy in Serie A. So he's had his success at that level. But Jordan and I are curious because this was one of those signings, and Jordan and I texted back and forth the day that it happened when it was announced. And we're like, okay, I'm not really sure in which way to really think about this because, one, he has no experience in MLS. He's got no experience in professional coaching. While he did play and was very successful as a player, there was obviously concerns about a rookie stepping into a role in MLS. Can you kind of speak to the new head coach, and are fans concerned that this might be like a Tab Ramos, squared? Like it's another issue of bringing in a coach that might not be ready for what the Dynamo want for their success and their progress throughout MLS.
Yeah, I think the biggest worry I like to say of the team right now, or at least what fans are most commonly worried about, is just if there is success with Paulo Nagamura, because bringing him in, obviously that you can easily see how the parallels between how they both coach, in the sense of they focus more on talent and even though Paulo Nagamura has more professional experience as an assistant and obviously coaching SKC too, you're pretty much in the same position in an essence as to how when Tab Ramos was brought in, because Tab Ramos has also had experience with the youth national team and obviously coaching professionals, it can be way different, especially coaching in USL for about 4 years. And yeah, it's just coming into that. And in the same press conference, I did manage to ask Pat Onstead about that, because a lot of fans are going to be really worried, and they're going to take it as a big risk, because just going back to that, when I told you about the team trying to create this culture, the way that Pat Onstead answered that question was in the sense that he didn't give me this couple sentences. He gave me a huge answer, and it was at the moment it was so big I couldn't remember everything he said, but you can tell how Pat was dedicated to that, to pretty much spend the next, I believe it was like 3 or 4 months, like the entire coaching search that took place, because like they didn't manage to interview like 100 candidates, but obviously they managed to break it down. And yeah, like it essentially comes down to them trying to go with a young coach to apply this new game plan. Maybe it's like a vision that Paul Nagamura like managed to develop over time, that managed to impress Pat Onstad. Like, also the other thing I forgot to mention is that the meme, I like to say, like the meme going around with the fan base is just that like Pat mentioned this in this interview, but basically the okay, that's my Alexa. Okay.
She has an opinion as well.
Thank you. Yeah. I was like, what was that sound? And okay. Anyways, like Pat Onstad, like even in the main press conference, like he said, hey, like this guy was so impressive. Like he gave us like 100-slide presentation about coaching, and I was like, okay, that 100 slides, okay, right. But still, like you can see how dedicated like Pat is to his job, and how much he puts into it, and like it's a little bit relieving, but at the same time, like we just have to wait and see how Paul Nagamura develops over time, and which I feel like it's going to be the theme for the next couple of years, is how patient we are, and how like the results produce themselves.
So you mentioned it earlier today a bit about Sebastian Ferreira being announced. He is a striker. Dynamo only had 34 goals scored last year. He scored 34 in 78 appearances for his prior club. Is this? Do you think this is enough to help kind of get them over the hump there, or is there still more needed? And what does he bring to the team?
Oh yeah, the striker position last year was a little bit controversial, mostly because of Christian Martinez being let go early because he wasn't getting enough minutes, and I was having to deal with Rudy, as well as us shifting the forwards around to start as a 9, or at least like 2 strikers up top, and yeah, like just bringing in Sebastian Ferreira, especially as the most expensive signing in Dynamo history now, and just looking at his stats, because he like you said it well, like he pretty much scored. He pretty much like given us in goals just last year with his whole career, actually, with Club Libertad, and yeah, it's just one of those signings, especially at his age. He has like a very high ceiling, and it seems like one of those signings that you couldn't really see with Matt Jordan a few years ago, except for Elise, because obviously it was mostly influenced by Wilmer Cabrera at the time, and yeah, like we're just so excited to see in action, because obviously we have the piece on the wings to try help him out, assuming that they manage to go with a 4-3-3, or like at least like 3 forwards in the front, because I feel like Fava Pico can like provide the balls, as well as Tyler Pasher on the other side, which we have seen it before last year, even at the worst situations. Still said they had to figure out how to work on the transition in the midfield, and just to try like open up those opportunities to find Sebastian, because Sebastian is probably going to be like the most important player this season. So we're just excited, honestly.
Yeah, massive signing, expensive signing, most in Dynamo history, as I saw was being tweeted out. And really, I mean, when you look at just his performances, I had a chance to kind of look at his YouTube highlights and stuff, but it really, he seems to be somebody, again, if you can kind of service him, which, depending on who that might be the more difficult part as far as getting him the ball in dangerous spots. But it seems like a really good step in the right direction. And it does seem like that Onstad is really, out looking deliberately for people that can get into the attack and join the attack, because it really was. It kind of going back through some of the stats and the different things that do exist in advanced stats, it seemed like the Dynamo were just kind of like this revolving door of trying to figure out what exactly are we doing in the attack, because I'm not sure that we have an idea. And if Maxi Rudy's gone, and that was a huge concern, but if they, this was yesterday when we were talking about the fact that Sebastian was going to be announced. He'd obviously been linked for a couple weeks, but before that, I mean, writing up this review, there were some major concerns going into, all right, who's going to score now? I mean, you've got a guy, and obviously I knew they were going to be looking, but it did seem like, and it still seems like they're still having a hard time convincing some talent to go there. But with this signing, I think it's a huge step in the right direction, at least.
Oh yeah, and Rudy, he was serviceable in some games, but at the same time, he was like a huge money pit, unfortunately. Right. So he had to be let go. We'll definitely take Sebastian over him any day.
I was gonna say he takes a shot from about anywhere. He's, I think Doyle or one of the guys in extra time were basically like he never sees a shot he doesn't like. So it was like he'll just shoot it. He'll go from wherever it might be, and that's pretty much what Maxey has always done. So it's interesting to kind of see what that'll look like, the attack, and how it'll be different this year. But kind of moving on into some other transfers, or at least some signings that they've made. You mentioned Boniek Garcia, who I thought was very serviceable in the time that he had been there, with the Dynamo having a crucial role. I know last year there were times where he was filling in spots that he had not really ever been comfortable playing, but he did it anyway just because it was one of those things that they just needed at least some consistency. But they did have a couple departures. From looking at the list, I mean, I don't think it was anything too crazy. I think most of it was that veteran leadership that some of these departures kind of gave. But then they go out and they signed Steve Clark, who had been with Portland, a goalkeeper until 2023, club option 2024 and 5. And he's had 8 years experience, has bounced around. He's been in a couple of MLS Cups, won a couple of MLS Cups, one with the Crew. He played with the Crew and won one last year. They didn't win any. So playing with teams that have played in the MLS Cup final. So he's got experience playing with really good teams, title contending teams. And then they also go out and they sign or they trade for Daniel Stairs, an LA Galaxy defender who is mostly a role defender. I think that maybe he competes for a starting spot. I get it. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on these two, because while they have nice MLS experience, it did seem like these two were more of just kind of those signings that you need to make that's a little bit of depth, and maybe they challenge for a starting spot.
Oh yeah, before Ferreira came in, Steve Clark was definitely like the biggest signing of the season. Obviously because we needed a starting goalkeeper, because Marriage was dumped, because we had to do that. And one of those things, as Daniel Steres, I feel like is going to be pretty good. When he's mostly going to be utilized in rotation, only because it's going to be Teenage and Parker as starting role. At least the first choice center backs too. But I obviously like Steres. He's going to be way needed, because we needed that experienced center back, and which is something that we have been pretty much lacking. And obviously, since we got rid of Alejandro Foymayor as well as Minor Figueroa during the off season, and yeah, and obviously those holes, I feel like, especially for the goalkeeping role, I feel like it's been something that has been lacking last year, especially since Marco Maric, he had his a few flashes last season, but for the most part it's been negative, because I'm not sure if you saw, there's been a few occasions last year where it was a miscue of his part, just doing giveaway after giveaway, and it was just pretty frustrating. And at that point, that also served as an opportunity for Michael Nelson, which is our second string keeper now, to step up and at least gave us an opportunity to see what it's made of. And we managed to see those games last year, and we've been overall impressed by Michael Nelson to the point that he can be a starter. And I feel like bringing in Steve Clark, and obviously he's pretty old, but he's still got some games left in his tank, and he's definitely gonna be a starter. But at the same time, I feel like at this point, it can also serve as a transition for Michael Nelson to earn the starting role at some point.
Are there still any holes that the team is trying to fill, and or do you know of any other names that are maybe being linked to other players as the month is starting to wind down here?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest hole, or at least the biggest need that we have to add to the roster right now will be a another right back, or at least like a starter, because I don't think Cedric Valentin is gonna be. It should be starting at this point. And I'll be happy if he proves me wrong, but just based on what I've seen last year, he has been burned several times, and just that right flank just looks pretty worrying. Like especially when it comes to rotating back, Cedric Valentin gets beat time after time, and Valentin he can be pretty good just coming off the bench, but like at this point, we definitely need a starter in the back to assist the back line. That and one of the positions that have been asked for as well by fans is bringing in another right winger, or at least like someone that can service the right flank. There aren't any names that are floating around that we know of that are most likely going to happen, but obviously, with the new international spot that we acquired, there's definitely a good chance that's gonna be it. It's gonna be utilized to fill somewhere, either in the right flank or somewhere in the midfield. It was sad to see what's gonna happen with that one. And I guess another one I can mention is just that someone that can also relieve Darwin Quintero, since he's also pretty old and he's getting to that age. Maybe bring in someone that can also relieve Darwin Quintero. Maybe come in the second half to sub him up. I feel like that can also be like a good option to use that international spot or whatever comes next.
I was gonna say it was very interesting that they go out and get that international spot today. That seemed like a precursor to something that is coming, which will be interesting. I still feel like this team needs some attacking depth, just because like you said, a team that struggled this much to score with just the one addition to it seems it's a little weird to add, the one striker. And obviously it's going to take time. I know that we've talked about this multiple times. When they come in as a number 9 right away, it never tends to really go well. I know Brenner and it's a different situation, obviously, but Brenner comes into Cincinnati last year, really struggles, finding the goal. Young players tend to, especially when they're coming from international places, it tends to be kind of an adjustment period to kind of figure out, okay, where can we score goals? How do we score goals? And who's around me that can provide, some of these link up passes that we can get on the end of. And you spoke about Darwin Quintero, and I found it interesting because I was going back through his stats, Andres, and he played 20 matches and started 9. You did say he was aging, but I think what a lot of fans are pointing to, there was a stat out there that I saw that when he did play, when he found the pitch, Houston averaged 1.22 points a game. And without Quintero on the bench, or without Quintero on the pitch, they averaged just 0.76 points a game. Now, obviously, there's more to it than that, but it does seem like it was very odd that he kind of fallen out. And you said that, they're looking for more attacking players to kind of relieve him of, the time that he spends on the pitch. But for me, is this something that, he could play more matches, or is there concern there with health? Is there concern there with, reliability, or was it just like a Tab Ramos, decision that he had made, that it was just going to be Darwin coming in off the bench, and these spots they really needed some just experience and help?
Yeah, we definitely think it's mostly just a decision by Tab that he didn't play at all, like towards the beginning of the season and through the halfway through at least, and it was immediate, because like as soon as he started playing, like he kept scoring goals,
right?
And we've all been wondering why is Darwin Quintero not playing? Like he's like the best Darwin that we have. Like definitely not Seren, but yeah, like you mentioned it yourself. Like it's like he still puts up the numbers regardless of his age.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like he can still I do believe he can still start with the team right now. Like he showed it last year. Like he can do it again. Like at least I believe for like the next couple seasons. And obviously I mentioned that he could use like another piece of relief in the second half, but at the same time, he was willing. Like you have also this offseason, they let his contract run out and he signed a new one, so he doesn't occupy like a DP spot, and he also just enjoys talking about being in Houston, him loving staying in Houston and playing for the team, and he just shows you he's still dedicated. And yeah, like it's just really awkward, like in part of Tab, because he it's something like he didn't like about his play style. Maybe he wanted to play him differently on the field. But yeah, like it's still very odd. But yeah, he still definitely has some games left in him.
So there was a lot of rotation and inconsistency last year. What pieces do you think are important for building the team forward? I know Logan and I were, Tyler Pasher fans at the beginning of the season last year, but going forward, what important players are you building the team around?
I feel like I did mention Ferreira, and I feel like he's like him, as well as the other two, or at least like whoever, how the forward line is structured. I feel like that set of players is definitely going to be a really big piece as to how the Dynamo are going to succeed. But also midfield wise, I feel like Matias Vera, if they can build a team around him, like only, and I'm saying it only because like Matias Vera, like he's one of those players that he's very quiet, but you can definitely appreciate his hard work and how much he has done for the team, like especially through all these tough years ahead, like in the past, and just a team trying to like build something out of it. And we do have like a lot of midfielders right now, and obviously not only Quintero being a piece, but also Coco Carrasquilla being like an additional piece. Maybe he can like pair up, but I feel like those pieces together, or maybe how it is structured, like either as a pivot going forward, is still like obviously I haven't seen like what Paul Nagamura is gonna do. Although I think it's gonna be more like a 4-3 maybe. Although I'm still quite uncertain because it's still very early in the preseason and we haven't seen much. But I feel like the success is gonna be revolving around midfield.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was like going through all their matches played and minutes played. It was almost like Tab couldn't figure out who he wanted at what point, which can't feel good as a player. And then trying to figure out what that midfield looks like. And that, I think that just that inconsistency really speaks to kind of how their struggles on offense translated. Just because or in the attack, and I think it's interesting just because I know there were pieces. I know Memo Rodriguez was somebody that last year a lot of people were talking about, and now he's pretty much gone non-existent, which has been really weird. And Tyler Pasher starting well, like Jordan said. I mean, I think Jordan, it was probably like the first 6 weeks or something like that, where it seemed like every day we were just going, man, Tyler Pasher's like got some real good talent, and then all of a sudden he's kind of faded. So it was like, where can they find consistency, and can they keep it consistent throughout the whole season and find guys, because it does seem like Matias Vera was probably their only real consistency when it came to that midfield last year.
Oh yeah, going back to Pasher, we all love Tyler Pasher. I've definitely like the injuries like really messed him up last year, and if it wasn't for those unlucky runs, he could have definitely scored more goals or at least get some more assists. And yeah, like consistency is gonna be the theme. Basically how the game plan is applied and the decisions made by Coach Nagamura is going to matter. All those things are going to matter. I try to see if I can think of more things, but yeah, it's just so early, and I can really see, like I can't really paint a picture of the team yet because of that. With all the with like maybe another player coming in that's going to affect the rotation maybe, but. Yeah, it's just too early for me, but it's definitely gonna matter on that.
So you talked about teenage. You talked about Tim Parker as being guys that were going to be solidifying that back line. But I do want to focus more back on Tim Parker because there was big talk about him last year. He captained a lot of your guys' games when he played all matches, started in all matches, and really. I mean, he's always been pretty consistent his whole career, and that's a big thing with Tim and trying to kind of stabilize a back line that I'm pretty sure is under refurbishment as we speak. But can you kind of talk to the importance of consistency with Parker and kind of how do you see his role playing out? Are his days numbered, years numbered, or do you see him kind of, in a couple of years staying with this backline and building consistency with some other players?
Oh yeah, he can stay. He can stay here for a while now. I mean, even though last year has been pretty dreadful, like he has shown some semblance of consistency despite our flaws on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And he pairing up with Teenage. There's been glimpses of that. The things that can definitely work out. It's just that it's gonna depend on how the roster is gonna set up on by the coach in every game. And just going back to what I talked about, Sarek and not getting beaten like that, and unless the adjustments are made accordingly, maybe on his own side of the flank, as opposite to Teenage, because he at least has some leverage with the long twist. And even though he's made some miscues, I feel like Teenage is progressing very well compared to Parker. But at the same time, anything can happen, because Parker is definitely that leader on the team that we definitely need at this point and over the years to come. And yeah, I still believe in Parker. I still believe he can do a lot of things here in the appropriate time. And obviously, this being a pretty good time for us to start from scratch, essentially. Maybe build something different.
Now it's time for my favorite question. The question we always end it with. What would be a successful season for the Houston Dynamo in 2022?
A successful season will definitely be squeaking in the playoffs, but that's a big ask these days, especially us not being in playoffs since 2017 and only once in the last 8 years now. And yeah, and obviously with a new coach, a new team, a new GM, it seems like a big ask, but I feel like at this point, very successful season will be playoffs, or at least like a more feasible goal, I like to say, would definitely be showing the changes, or at least like make the changes to be materialized on the field, in the sense that we see those consistent results day in and out, or at least every week, or whenever the squad is rotating, like for 2 or 3 games a week. It's going to be something that we're going to watch closely, and success is going to be dependent on that.
All right. Well, thank you, Andres. If you want to go ahead and tell people where they can find your stuff again.
Oh, yeah, of course. At Dynamic Foxtrot on Twitter. It's going to be the place I'm going to be mostly active. And if you guys are interested in listening on Dynamo Podcast, Noodle Time is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as big platforms like YouTube. We talk a lot about the Dynamo. We talk about a lot of the Dash, our NWSL team, and we just love doing it.
We are back from our break, and we're back from our interview with Andres. Your thoughts, Logan, because I think this is probably the most realistic expectations we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody saying squeaking into the playoffs would be very successful, but the main success would be showing growth on the field from last year under this new GM, this new manager. I feel like that is what the benchmark is. Last year, we had them predicted at 12th place.
Yeah.
They finished 13th in the West, so we were actually on the money there. We're not going to predict that right now, but I do worry about the team. I do think Nagamura is a question mark. I don't know him as well as I know Tab Ramos, actually. I don't know Tab that well. It's not like I'm friends with him. But I mean, like...
Are you not texting Tab after the show?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Where I was like kind of familiar with Tab, that I was like, I'm not too high on this. And then, it turned out they fired him. So I think looking at it, I worry for the Dynamo that they couldn't have gotten a more experienced coach in. But if Nagamura is, Logan froze for a second, sorry. But if maybe he's buying into what Pat Onstad wants, and that is why he's picked and why they're going to work together and why it's going to work out. But I think showing some growth is the big thing. What's your thoughts on maybe the steps forward here for the Dynamo and all that?
Yeah, I think what you said is right. Growth is what this team needs to see. Am I frozen again? Is that why you're laughing? No? Oh, okay. He's laughing in my video, and I can see you laughing. No, but it's what this team needs, right? They need to see growth because it's been a long time since this team has really felt substantial growth and growing back in the right direction. And Tab's experiment last year just seemed like seriously, go and look at the minutes played. It's a scatter number of players that have had that he tried and like, oh, well, that didn't work so well, so we're going to go try something else. And, with injuries mixed in, I do feel like Tab was always trying to monitor and figure out what is it that this team needs. And I'm not sure he ever knew what the team needed. I think that was a big issue with the Dynamo last year. And then kind of moving into this year, like you said, Jordan, I think it's interesting that they go out and they nab Nagamura. I think bringing in a coach that has assistant coach experience, but no MLS head coach experience, dealing with professionals, that's a totally different game. I mean, you're dealing with youth academy players who are trying to prove themselves, and you're going to get, guys that work hard for you, that want to be part of a team, that want to show they can be part of a team, that want to show that they can grow. And they're going to be more interested in trying to please you as the head coach. Whereas you've got professionals now. I mean, if you've got issues with a professional, it becomes toxic. It's a toxic culture. It's a toxic locker room. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I think they do have a great group of guys. I think that they can build chemistry with this club. But I just don't think the pieces are good enough. I mean, we've seen guys like Memo Rodriguez last year, Jordan, I remember hyping him up and people hyping him up. They were like, basically, this could be his breakout year. He could become that guy in the midfield.
Reminds me of Pochettino. Yeah.
Yes, it really does. It's kind of like Memo was growing and then could have grown into like a Showfeast, like a Maxi Morales, somebody like that in the midfield that can kind of be that wizard. But he never turned into that. Now he's fallen so far off the depth chart. I don't even know where his name is. I mean, it's so difficult. Tyler Pasher was probably their best player last year if he plays consistently and doesn't get hurt. And within the first 6 or 7 games, it seems like the consistency dropped off in playing time, and he's been hurt and he couldn't come back. And there was just issues all across the board. But again, I'm worried about this team too. Big question mark. I would say that is like, I guess we're being a little too kind if we say it's a big question mark. It's a huge question mark, right? What is this team going to do? What is Nagamura going to do with this team? Can he get them playing together? And they're number 9. I'm going to warn you now. Like we've always thought they could come in and do it, Jordan. But when has the last number 9 stepped into this league and right off the bat, boomed? I guess Joseph would be the closest thing to booming that you would get, right? But other than that, this league is so much different than what people think.
It'll be interesting. We'll see. We'll see how it goes here. If you want to give us a follow, or if you want to reach out to us, you can follow us or contact us on Twitter at Stateside Show, Instagram at Stateside Show, Facebook.com/Stateside Show. Email us, statesideshow@gmail.com. And next week we've got some, I think, Union, some Minnesota Loons. So we got some stuff scheduled here that we'll have a good time with. And just want to thank everybody for your support, and we'll catch you next time.